Thank you for joining this Property Tribes interview focusing on pensions and property, and joining me on Skype I've got the lovely Kate Faulkner. So welcome, Kate, good to see you.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
Now, you've approached us about this interview because you have concerns that the recent budget is going to encourage people to enter into the property market, and you want to express some concerns that you think people need to be aware of.
Absolutely right. I think we don't always run the numbers to see what a buy-to-let or a property investment is going to deliver back to us over time. And there are some real issues with investing in property that can mean it won't be a good investment from a pension, from a retirement income perspective. And it's a very, very complex investing for your retirement.
Now, you've actually run some numbers, haven't you, to really prove this. So the message you want to get out is to be very wary of, you know, these property clubs and deal sourcers saying, sink all your pension money into property, we're going to make you rich.
Absolutely. I mean, for properties, I love property. It's a fantastic way to make money. But I think sometimes the rewards are concentrated on more than the risks, if you like. And when it comes to your pension and retirement, there's nothing you can do if it goes wrong, apart from go back to work when you're 85, which I don't know about you, Vanessa, but I don't plan to be working by then. So what we did was we worked with a financial company called Chase Beer, and we ran the numbers, and what we learned from that was that from creating a capital lump sum, property is great. But in terms of delivering an income, for example, from rent off that capital sum, property isn't necessarily the best way to do it. So I always say, if you're investing in property, the first thing you've got to choose is, are you investing for income purposes or are you investing for a capital sum? And if you are thinking of gaining money in your retirement from property, it looks like you might have to think more about a capital sum and then reinvesting that financially, rather than relying on the rental income to give you the money.
Indeed, and I think, you know, one of the things that Property Tribes is very keen for people to understand is that the property clubs market and the deal sourcing market is totally unregulated. These people actually do, by law, need to be a member of a property ombudsman scheme, but the vast majority of them aren't. So your message really is to speak with an IFA who has understanding of property.
That's very much how I work, and I always say, if you can find an IFA or a wealth manager or something called who's invested in property themselves, they appreciate that it can make people a lot of money. So they like clients, and they will have rich clients who are heavily invested in property. So they understand the benefits, and they're not going to try and sell you something else instead. The problem is nobody's really run the numbers well enough. So we know that any investment that you have, there are certain elements of it that make it better than investing in something else. And one of the things with property is you benefit from it over time versus other investments, because you can gear that investment. Mm-hmm. And the reason that's so important, of course, we've had a crash. So if you invested cash in a property in 2007, let's make numbers easy, because that helps me. So let's say you invested £100,000 cash. You might be getting a 67% return through rental income, but obviously that's gross, that's not net. And that rental return normally doesn't increase in line with inflation. Now, on average, the ONS says rents go up by about 1% a year. Well, your costs as a pensioner are going to be going up far more than that. Lots of increases in utility bills, increases in food, all the things that you're going to be spending a vast amount of your money on are going up far more than 1% a year. So your income is declining each year. And on average, property prices probably have dropped at least 10% since then. So not only is your asset delivering you less real money, it's also worth less than it was. So it might only be worth 90 grand now. And that's where we've got to be really careful, because the whole getting your money and having it in a pension, it's fine if it's in addition to money that you already have invested in your own home, in a pension, in other financial schemes. So that's the way I do it. I invest in property when I have all my other ducks in a row, but I don't make it my prime investment that I'm relying on. It's extra bonus for me.
Absolutely. So it's a case of not having all your eggs in one basket, and if you are going to look at property as a pension investment, to seek the correct advice.
Very much so, and just really check with an IFA that you've got all your ducks in a row before you add any property to it. Another good example is if you're a family and you've got kids, your rental income that you get from a buy-to-let may mean that wipes out some of your child benefits, because of the new laws that were introduced in January 2013. So you have to talk to somebody in finance now, because otherwise they can't assess all of your wealth, and they can't assess the impact, which could be negative, of adding property to it.
Well, that's great, Kate. Thank you very much for joining us in this interview where we've been talking about pensions and property with Kate Faulkner. Thanks for contributing this to Property Tribes, Kate. It's great to have your contribution.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.